This video is called The One Rule for Life by Immanuel Kant's Moral Philosophy, Mark Manson. Mark Manson, he wrote the book, How to Stop Giving a Fuck. Fantastic book. Fantastic book if you haven't read it.
Depending on your perspective, Immanuel Kant was either the most boring person on the planet or a productivity hacker's wet dream. For over 40 years, he woke up every morning at 5 a.m. and wrote for exactly 3 hours.
Wow.
He would then lecture at the same university for exactly 4 hours. He followed that up with lunch at the same restaurant each day. Then, in the afternoon, he would go on an extended walk through the same park, on the same route, leaving and returning home at the exact same time, every day. Kant spent his entire life in Königsberg, Prussia. I mean that literally. He never left the city. Despite the sea being an hour away, he never saw it. Kant was efficiency personified. He was so mechanical in his habits that his neighbors joked that they could tune their clocks based on when he left his apartment each day. He would leave for his daily walk at 3:30 p.m., have dinner with the same friend every evening, and return home to finish work and go to bed at exactly 10 p.m. It's easy for us to scoff at a guy like this. What a loser. Seriously, get a life, dude. But Kant was one of the most important and influential thinkers in modern history. He did more to steer the world from his single-room apartment in Prussia than most kings and armies ever did before or since. If you're living in a democratic society that protects individual rights, you have Kant to partially thank for that. He was the first person to ever envision a global governing body that would guarantee peace across much of the world. He prescribed space-time in such a way that it later inspired Einstein's discovery of relativity. He came up with the idea that animals could potentially have rights themselves. He invented the philosophy of aesthetics and beauty and resolved a 200-year philosophical debate in the span of a couple hundred pages. He reinvented moral philosophy from top to bottom, overthrowing ideas that had been the basis of Western civilization since Aristotle. Kant was an intellectual badass.
Let him cook, nigga. Fact. Let him cook. Nah, bro. Bro was in that motherfucking dungeon cooking. Cooking. Like,
if brains had balls, Kant's would have been made out of steel. His ideas, particularly about ethics, are still discussed and debated in thousands of universities today. And that's what I want to talk about, Kant's moral philosophy and why it matters. Now, you might be saying, really, moral philosophy? Who cares, man?
You turn the volume up or turn subtitles on? Yeah, I got you, bro. My bad. I think I had it low by accident. Let me know if this is better.
Show me a shiny sunset inspirational quote or a cat meme. Well, that right there is moral philosophy. Anytime you say, who cares, or what's the big deal, you're essentially questioning the value of something. Is it worth your time and attention? Is it better or worse than something else? These are all questions of value, and they all fall under the umbrella of moral philosophy. Our moral philosophy determines what we value, what we care about, and what we don't care about. And our values determine our decisions.
I had this is a quick anecdote that made me think about my childhood. Growing up a lot, I used to always say, I don't care. I don't care. Like, literally, like, not in like a bad way. Like, if someone asked me, like, what do you want to eat? I'd be like, I don't care. Or I'd just say, doesn't matter. To anything. Where do you want to go? Doesn't matter. What do you want to do? Doesn't matter. It was always just doesn't matter. And then I realized to a point it was like I genuinely wasn't thinking for myself. Like, I didn't want to do the work to just think. And I think it's because, like, I was just too scared of being judged. Right? I was scared that if I said my opinion, someone would be like, "Oh, you like that? Oh, that's cool to you?" Oh, and it took me a minute to break out of that. Like, it took me a minute to be like, "Bro, I'm going to say what I feel, and if you don't like it, you can suck my dick." Like, and it's okay for us to disagree and still be friends. We don't have to, right? Because I thought, like, to have friends, you had to agree on everything. So I'd be like, "It doesn't matter. Yeah, sure." But I'm like, no, if you want to go to Wendy's and I want to go to Chipotle, cool. We can go to both places and still be cool after this is over. And yeah, that was just a quick like shift of belief in my life that I thought was just wild. I was like, just the little things that I never even noticed.
Actions and beliefs. Therefore, moral philosophy applies to everything in our lives. Got it? Kant's moral philosophy is unique and counterintuitive. Kant believed that for something to be good, it had to be universal. That is, it can't be right to do something in one situation and wrong to do it in another. If lying is wrong, it has to be wrong all the time. It has to be wrong when everyone does it, period. If it isn't always right or always wrong, then it cannot be a valid ethical principle.
Sure.
Kant called these universalized ethical principles categorical imperatives, rules to live by that are valid in all contexts, in every situation, to every human being. Well, holy shit, universal laws that dictate all morality for every human being? Sure, you want fries with that? It's so impossible, it sounds ludicrous. But Kant made a hell of an attempt. In fact, he made a number of attempts at creating categorical imperatives. Some of those attempts were quickly ripped to shreds by other philosophers, but others have actually held up the test of time to some degree. One of them, in particular, has kind of stuck. And in all of my years reading and studying philosophy, psychology, and other sciences, it is one of the most powerful statements that
Thank
I've
you
ever
for the
come
31
across.
bits.
Its implications reach into every part of each person's life. In a single sentence, it sums up the bulk of all of our ethical intuitions and assumptions, and in each situation, it points to a clear direction of how we should be acting and why. Okay, enough foreplay. Here's Kant's rule. Act that you use humanity, whether in your own person or in a person of any other, always at the same time as an end and never merely as a means.
Say that again?
Okay, what the actual fuck?
Yeah.
Let's back up for a second. Kant believed that rationality was sacred. When I say rationality, I don't mean like a Sudoku or chess grandmaster rationality. I mean rationality as the fact that we are the only known creatures in the universe that are able to make decisions, weigh options, and consider the moral implications of each and every action.
Sure.
Basically, consciousness. To Kant, the only thing that distinguishes us from the rest of the universe is our ability to process information and act consciously in the world. And this, to him, is special. It's exceedingly special.
It's
For all we know,
we're
we're the only shot the universe has at intelligent self-organization. Therefore, we need to take it seriously. And therefore, rationality and protecting conscious choice must be the basis for all of our moral reasoning. Kant wrote that, quote, without rationality, the universe would be a waste, in vain, and without purpose. To Kant's mind, without intelligence and the freedom to exercise that intelligence, we might as well just be a bunch of rocks. Nothing would matter. Therefore, Kant believed that all morality is derived from the protection and promotion of rational consciousness in each individual. So, how do you do that? Well, Kant's rule above. Let's restate Kant's rule in a more modern language to make it more easily digestible.
Please.
Quote, each person must never be treated only as a means to some other end, but also be treated as an end themselves. Okay, let's say I'm hungry and I want a burrito. I get in the car and I drive to Chipotle and I order my usual double meat monster that makes me oh so happy on a weekly basis. In this situation,
W Chipotle in the chat. Just wanted to off topic, but Chipotle is just fire. It's just the greatest thing of all time, bro. And Happy Duck, thank you for the bits. Thank you for the bits, sir.
eating the burrito is my end goal. It's ultimately why I'm doing everything else. Getting in the car, driving, buying gas, and so on. All these things I do to get the burrito are the means, i.e. the things that I must do in order to achieve my end. If you call a friend to find out how they're doing, calling them is a means, finding out how they're doing is your end.
Yep,
If you
gotcha.
leave a party early so you can wake up in the morning, leaving the party is the means, and waking up early is your end. Means are things that we do conditionally. I don't want to get in my car and drive, but I want a burrito. Therefore, driving is the means to my burrito end. An end is something that is desired for its own sake. It is the defining motivating factor of our decisions and behaviors. If I wanted to eat a burrito only because my wife wanted a burrito and I wanted to make her happy, then the burrito is no longer my end. It is now a...
That is facts. No, that actually is I don't know. How do you I had a habit of like cleaning up a lot for other people. Does that make sense? I had a habit of like cleaning up a lot for other people. So it was like I would only do it when I knew people were coming to my house. When people were coming to my house when I was growing up. So it would just be like they would be coming to my grandma's house, I'd be there and I know someone's coming, and that's the only time I would clean. Not for myself to keep my own room clean. You know what I'm saying? And I think that comes a lot from your parents just always telling you like, oh, someone's coming over, clean up. Someone's coming over, clean up. So you then kind of think that, oh, you only clean up when people are coming over. Like you only do the thing that you hate, cleaning, just so they can come to your house and see that, oh, it's clean, rather than like just clean up for the sake of keeping a tidy area, you know, and you can think better.
A means to an even greater end. Her happy, then the burrito is no longer my end. It is now a means to an even greater end, making my wife happy. And if I only wanted to make my wife happy so I could hopefully get laid tonight, now my wife's happiness is a means to a greater end of sex. Likely that last example made you squirm a little bit and think I'm kind of a dirtbag. And that's exactly what Kant is talking about. His argument, hell, his rule states that treating any human being as a means to some other end is the basis of all unethical behavior.
Shit.
So treating a burrito as a means to my wife's end is fine. After all, as far as I know, burritos don't have rational consciousness. But if I treat my wife as a means to the end of sex, now I am treating her as a means. And Kant would argue that that is some shade of wrong.
Interesting.
Let's give Kant's rule the common sense check. Lying is wrong because you are misleading another person's conscious behavior in order to achieve your own goal. You are therefore treating that person as a means to your own end. Therefore, lying is unethical. Cheating is unethical for a similar reason. You are violating the expectations of other rational and sentient beings for your own personal aims. You are treating the rules and expectations agreed to with others as a means to your own personal end.
Yeah.
That is wrong. Violence, same deal. You are treating another person as a means to some greater political or personal end. Bad. Very bad. Kant's formulation checks all the boxes that we would expect from a theory of morality, but it goes way, way beyond common sense morality. In fact, I will try to argue that Kant's rule plausibly extends to pretty much everything that we value as right and good today. Check it out. The moral implications of Kant's rule. The list below is incomplete. Some of the items Kant explicitly wrote about, but others are extrapolations that I've taken from his work and applied to my own values.
But what if fighting is just fun? I mean, then you're a fighter, right? That means you fight for the means of, like, the end is just you wanted to have a fight. Like UFC fighters, I assume, like what's their end? Like what's their end? I mean, to get paid, I guess. And like I guess you use another person to get paid, but you know, no. I think it's like you enjoyed fighting. Money, fame. The adrenaline, power, but if the fighting is mutual though. They're aware, you're right. They're aware of the fighting. It's consensual. That's true. You're both in there fighting, so both of you have the same have the same means. And I guess the end is just to win, to be a winner, to be a champion, right? Like.
My hope is that by the end of it, you will see the incredible flexibility of the single moral maxim to extend almost all areas of human life. Example 1, laziness. Okay, I can be as lazy as the next guy, full disclosure, and I often feel guilty about it, but we all know that fucking off in the short term inevitably harms us in the long term. But for whatever reason, this short-term gain versus long-term loss calculation never seems to inspire or move us. But that's not why Kant thinks it's wrong. In fact, Kant would say that this is the wrong way to think about laziness. It's insufficient. Kant believed that we all had a moral imperative to do the best that we can at all times. But he didn't say to do your best because of self-esteem or personal utility or contributing to society or whatever. He went even further than that. He argued you should do your best because anything less is to treat ourselves as a means rather than an end. Yes, you can treat yourself as a means as well. You're sitting on the couch, refreshing Twitter for the 28th time, and you're treating your mind and your attention as a mere pleasure receptacle. You are not maximizing the potential of your consciousness. In fact, you are using your consciousness as a means to stimulate your emotional ends. This is not only bad, Kant would argue, but it's unethical. You are actively harming yourself. Example 2, addiction. Believe it or not, Kant wasn't a total party pooper. He enjoyed some wine with his lunch. He smoked a pipe, but only at the same time each morning, and only one bowl of tobacco.
He's cooking. No, he's cooking. He's cooking. He's cooking. He is. He's cooking. I mean, he's about to go into addiction, but this is... I never thought about that. Like, you're just kind of fucking up your body, or you're fucking with your brain. If it's... doesn't matter if it's overdoing it on alcohol, drugs, just so that end could be that little bit of dopamine kick. No, he's going crazy. He's going nuts. He's going nuts.
Pipe, but only at the same time each morning, and only one bowl of tobacco. Kant was not necessarily anti-fun. What he was against, though, was pure escapism. He wrote that using alcohol or other means of escaping one's own life was unethical because it requires you to use your rational mind and freedom as a means to some other end. In this case, getting fucked up. Kant believed in facing one's problems. He believed that suffering is sometimes warranted and even necessary in life.
Always warranted.
We tend to judge the immorality of addiction by the damage it causes to others. But Kant believed that first, overindulgence was fundamentally the act of being immoral to oneself. The harm it did to others was merely collateral damage. It was a failure to confront the reality of one's own mind and consciousness. And this failure is akin to lying to oneself or cheating oneself out of precious life potential. And to Kant, lying to yourself is just as unethical as lying to others. Example 3, people-pleasing and seeking approval. Okay, I know it's not a good...
He's talking to me right here. Talking to me right here. People pleasing and seeking approval. That I feel like I know he's talking to me because he said it, and my heart, I kind of squirmed a little bit. I kind of squirmed a little bit. I did.
Good strategy to be kissing people.
Well, you are a streamer, exactly. Like, so it's kind of like it's a part of the game, and I guess you have to sit on a fine line with it because it's like. It's like working in a restaurant. Like, you kind of have to please people. Like, if they come in and ask for something, like, you want to be like, oh yeah, sure, and you obviously have to look for the feedback. So it's like, I don't know.
People's asses all the time, but unethical? Really? Isn't being really nice to people and making them happy an ethical thing to do? Well, not necessarily. Seeking approval and people-pleasing forces you to alter your actions and speech to no longer reflect what you actually think and feel. So right there, you are already treating yourself as a means rather than an end. But it gets worse. Because if you alter your speech and behavior in order to make others like you, then you are also treating them as a means to your ends. You are altering and manipulating their perceptions of you in order to garner a pleasant...
Yeah, okay. This is... I don't think I do this too much now, but... This is kind of what I was going back to when I was younger, where I would kind of like do that doesn't matter stuff. And I think all kids do it. Like, you're in a, how do you put it? You meet a new group of friends, right? You meet a new group of friends and you want to fit in. So you kind of start talking like them. You start dressing like them. You kind of start moving like that, right? Like, and when they ask you to do things with them, you do it even though you don't even really like them that much. Like, I've been through that, like, in like middle school and like 6th grade. I think after a while, when I finally got to high school, I was like, nah, bro, I just like doing my own thing. I like being by myself, and that's just who I am. I don't like this going out stuff. But I can see how that harms yourself. I can definitely see how that harms yourself for sure.
Response from them.
I wasn't thinking of people pleasing and stuff like that when I wasn't thinking of this when he said people pleasing.
Kant would undoubtedly argue that this is also unethical. How dare you tell me my shirt looks good on me, you ethical piece of shit. I've written at length about how people pleasing and seeking approval leads to toxic relationships. But again, as usual, Kant takes it even further because Kant was fucking hardcore like that. Example 4, manipulation or coercion. Even if you're not lying, but you're communicating with an attitude and a purpose of gaining something from someone without their full knowledge or explicit consent, then you are being unethical. Kant was big on fully informed consent. He believed it was the only way for there to be healthy interactions between individuals. It was radical for his time, and it's something that people still struggle to accept today.
Him and the game is game guy would not get along.
There are two areas in the modern world where I think the consent issue is huge, and Kant would have a lot to say about it. The first is obvious: sex and dating. Under Kant's rule, anything short of explicit, fully informed, and fully sober consent is ethically out of bounds. This is a hot-button issue today, and I personally think people make it far more complicated than it needs to be. It basically just means being respectful. People assume this means asking for permission 20 times on a date, but it's not. All you have to do is state how you feel, ask them how they feel, and then respect whatever response comes back to you. That's it. It's not complicated. Respect was also sacred within Kant's moral framework because Kant believed that all conscious creatures have a fundamental dignity that must be respected at all times, and by everyone. For Kant, consent was the act of demonstrating respect. Anything that didn't lead towards consent between two people was, to some degree, disrespectful. I know that makes
facts. This is a simple thing for me, bro. It's like when I used to leave my deodorant in my room, bro. When I used to leave my deodorant in my room, and one of my brothers would come in and use that shit without asking me. I did not give you consent. You raped my deodorant. You raped it. Like, I did not give you consent. And this disrespectful. That's disrespect, nigga. That's disrespect. You touched my shit without asking. No, I actually hate that. I hate when people touch any of my things without asking. My wife and I, we get into it sometimes because of that. I'll put something somewhere, and if I come back and it's moved, I'm like, why did you touch my? Why? Who told you to touch my? Even my kids, bro. Why did you touch my shoes, bro? It has to. There was no consent given to touch my thing. There was no consent given to move my shoes, bro. That's not sharing and caring. Sharing means you gave consent. Hey, can I have this after you're done? Yes, of course. That is consensual sharing. If I put something down, okay, and someone picks it up and drinks it without asking, that is not sharing. That is stealing, nigga. If it was a random person, that is stealing. They're your family. I don't give a fuck. Ask. Is that so hard to ask? For you to just ask me? Is that so hard to ask? For you to just ask me like, hey, can I take a sip of your coffee? Like, is that so hard to ask for consent, bro? If you can't ask for consent on something so small, I don't think you'll ask for consent when the time comes on the big stuff. I don't think you will. If you want to come in somebody's room, I don't care. I think parents should have to ask to enter their children's room, okay? You should have to ask, can I come in? Don't just barge in here. You're like, I thought we had a respectful relationship. You know? Like, it should, like, come on, man. It's like, I think Kant would agree with me. I think even those small things, I think he would agree with me. He would say, no, you did not give consent. You did not give consent.
Kant sound like an angry grandmother, but the implications of the consent issue are far-reaching and wide, touching every human relationship that we have. The other modern area that is problematic is sales and advertising. Pretty much every marketing tactic is built around treating people as a means to some end. That is, making money. In fact, Kant struggled much of his life with the ethical implications of capitalism and wealth inequality. He believed that it was impossible for anyone to amass a fortune without some degree of manipulation or coercion along the way. Therefore, he was dubious of the entire system. He wasn't anti-capitalist per se, and communism didn't exist yet, but the staggering wealth inequality of his time did make him uneasy. He believed anyone who had amassed a fortune had a moral imperative to give much of it away to the starving masses.
Yeah,
Example
I
5, bigotry.
True.
Might as well throw it in here, especially since Enlightenment thinkers were infamous for having pretty racist views, which were common in the time. Interestingly, Kant, despite saying some pretty awful shit about race early in his career, turned the intellectual corner and realized later in his life that no race has any right to subjugate any other. It makes sense, after all.
At first, this nigga was like, all the whites are geniuses. The rest of these niggas, they should be our pets. That's what he was saying at first. And then he snapped into it, bro. He snapped into it. Thank you. I'm liking this guy more and more, bro. I'm liking this guy more and more.
Racism and other forms of bigotry are textbook cases of treating other people as means rather than ends. Kant came to the conclusion that if all rationality is sacred, then there's nothing permitting European special privileges over any other nations or races. He also became vehemently anti-colonialist. Kant argued that regardless of race, the violence and oppression required to subjugate populations would destroy people's humanity in the process.
Oh, God.
It was the ultimate unethical institution. This was completely radical for the time, radical to the point of being considered absurd by many. But Kant reasoned that the only way to prevent war and oppression was to form an international government that organized and bound nation states together. Centuries later, the United Nations would largely be based on his vision. Example 6, the duty of self-improvement. Most philosophers of the Enlightenment believed that the best way to live was to increase happiness as much as possible, and to reduce suffering as much as possible as well. This approach to ethics is called utilitarianism and is still the predominant view held by many thinkers today. Kant had a completely different take on how to go about improving the world. Let's call it the Michael Jackson maxim. Because Kant, like Michael, believed that if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make that change. But instead of grabbing his crotch, Kant made his argument with brutal rationality. And here's how he argued it. Kant believed that generally it is impossible to know whether a person deserves to be happy or suffer because you can never truly know what their intentions and aims were when they acted. Similarly, even if you should make others happy, there's no way to precisely know how to make them happy. You do not know their feelings, values, or expectations. You do not know the implications your actions will have on them. On top of that, what actually constitutes suffering or happiness in most non-extreme situations is unclear.
Yeah.
Your divorce may cause you incredible pain today,
everyone.
but in a year, it might be the best thing that ever happened to you. You may relish the joy of a celebration with friends, but maybe it's distracting you from pursuing something that would prevent more future suffering. Therefore, Kant argued, the only logical way to improve the world is through improving ourselves. This is because the only thing we can truly experience with any certainty is ourselves. Kant defined self-improvement as developing the ability to adhere to the categorical imperative, and he saw self-improvement as a duty, an undebatable obligation put on us all. To Kant, the reward or punishment for not following one's duty was not in heaven or hell, but in a life made for oneself. Adherence to morality produced not only a better life for yourself, but a better life for all those around you. Similarly, failure to adhere to morality would produce unnecessary suffering for oneself and for those around you. Kant's rule has a ripple effect. Your improved ability to be honest with yourself will increase how honest you are with others. And your honesty with others will influence them to be more honest with themselves, which will then help them improve their lives. This is true for all aspects.
Yes, someone talked about this the other day. I mean, yeah, like we all know the case. Like if you help one person, they'll help somebody else. If you make one person smile, they'll make somebody else smile. And it really does. I believe it really does have a ripple effect, man. And I like genuinely, I think if you're in a group of people that are just bums, like we'll just call a group of people just bums, and you decide to get up one day and you're like, I don't want to be a fucking bum anymore. You start exercising, you start eating better, you start consuming better things on the internet, and I think one of two things will happen. They'll pick up with you, and like then what you did will spread to them and they'll spread it to more people, or you guys just won't, like, you won't be near each other, and you'll find people who will take from you eventually. Either way you'll spread it to somebody, like COVID. Yeah, it'll be a virus. It'll be a virus.
Of Kant's rule, whether it's honesty, productivity, charity, or consent. The Michael Jackson maxim suggests that Kant's rule, once adopted by enough people, will generate a snowball effect in the world, enacting more positive change than any calculated policy or institution. The duty of self-respect. Kant intuitively understood that there is a fundamental link between our respect for ourselves and our respect for the world. The way we interact with our own psyche is the template which we apply to our interactions with others, and little progress can be made with others until we've made progress with ourselves. He would likely be disgusted with the self-esteem movement today, seeing it as just another way of treating people as a means to some end of feeling better. Self-respect isn't
Who are
about
the
feeling
means?
better. Self-respect is about knowing your own value, knowing that every human, no matter who they are, deserves basic rights and dignities,
Yeah.
that every consciousness is sacred and must be
Yeah.
treated as such. Kant would argue that telling ourselves that we are worthless and shitty is just as wrong as telling others that they are worthless and shitty. Lying to ourselves is just as unethical as lying to others. Harming ourselves is just as repugnant as harming others. Self-love and self-care are therefore not something you learn about or practice. They are something you are ethically called on to cultivate within yourself, even if they are all you have left. The impact of
it's crazy to think about that, right? Because I feel like usually, right? Like it feels like this. I had a thought. Like I feel like only humans are the ones who like have the decision to not take care of themselves. It feels like at times, like are conscious enough to be like, no, I don't want to exercise, or I don't want to do the things that give me a better life, right? I feel like animals get up and just do what they're supposed to do. No thought. Like, I need to eat. I need to be eating this certain thing. I need to be doing. They just do it. Birds, they just do it. It's just instinct. Like, they just know. They just know to fucking do it. And the ones that don't, die. That's how it is out there. If you're not doing the right, you just die. You're in the jungle, you're not living like the rest of it, you just die, bro. There's no other way. And it's I don't know, it can just be crazy to see sometimes. It's like, I feel like this is just a belief, right? These could be totally different one day, but I feel like too many people kind of just hate themselves to the point where they just don't want to help themselves. That's what it can feel like. That's what it can feel like.
Kant's philosophy, if they are all you have left. The impact of Kant's philosophy. Kant's philosophy, if you dive into it, is riddled with inconsistencies and issues, but the power of his original ideas has undoubtedly changed the world.
Happy Duck, you don't hate yourself. Come on now. You're here, man.
And strangely, when I came across them a year ago, they changed me. I had spent most of my 20s pursuing many of the items on the list above, but I pursued them for practical and transactional strategies and issues.
Debatable? Debate with me. What do you mean? What do you mean debatable? Let me go back because I actually missed the sentence.
Knowing that every human, no matter who they are, deserves basic rights and dignities, that every consciousness is sacred and must be treated as such. Kant would argue that telling ourselves that we are worthless and shitty is just as wrong as telling others that they are worthless and shitty. Lying to ourselves is just as unethical as lying to others. Harming ourselves is just as repugnant as harming others.
Okay, I got you.
Self-love and self-care are therefore not something you learn about or practice. They are something you are ethically called on to cultivate within yourself, even if they are all you have left. The impact of Kant's philosophy. Kant's philosophy, if you dive into it, is riddled with inconsistencies and issues, but the power of his original ideas has undoubtedly changed the world. And strangely, when I came across them a year ago, they changed me. I had spent most of my 20s pursuing many of the items on the list above, but I pursued them for practical and transactional reasons. I pursued them as a means because I thought that they would make my life better. Meanwhile, the more I worked at it, the emptier I felt. But reading Kant was an epiphany. In only 80 pages, Kant swept away decades worth of assumptions and beliefs. He showed me that what you actually do doesn't matter as much as the purpose behind doing it. And until you find the right purpose, you haven't found much of anything at all. Kant wasn't always a humdrum, routine-obsessed dork. He wasn't always the mayor of Bourville. In fact, in Kant's younger years, he was a bit of a party hound as well.
Whoa.
He would stay up late drinking wine and playing cards with his friends.
Kant.
He'd sleep late and eat too much and host big parties. It wasn't until he turned 40 that he dropped it all and developed the routine life he later made famous. He said that he developed this routine at 40 because he realized the moral implications of his actions and decided that he would no longer allow himself to waste the precious time or energy his consciousness had left. Kant called this developing character, aka building a life designed around maximizing your own potential. He believed most people can't develop true character until they reach middle age, because until then they are still too seduced by the fancies and whims of the world, blown this way and that, from excitement to despair and back again. We're too obsessed with accumulating more means and are hopelessly oblivious to the ends that drive us.
That's me.
To develop character, a person must master their own actions and master themselves. And while few of us can accomplish that in a lifetime, Kant believed it's something we each have a duty to work towards. In fact, he believed it was the only thing to work towards. And that must hopelessly oblivious to back against fancies and character until they reach middle age, because until then they are still too seduced by the fancies and whims of the world, blown this way and that, from excitement to despair and back again. We're too obsessed with accumulating more means and are hopelessly oblivious to the ends that drive us. To develop character, a person must master their own actions and master themselves. And while few of us can accomplish that in a lifetime, Kant believed it's something we each have a duty to work towards. In fact, he believed it was the only thing to work towards.
Rules for happiness. Something to do, someone to love, something to hope for. Kant.
What's up, everybody? Mark Manson here, and what you just heard is an excerpt from the #1 New York Times bestseller, Everything is Fucked, a book about hope. Be sure to check it out, and check out my YouTube channel. It's here on YouTube.
That was a great video, bro. That was a fantastic video. The whole goal is just to hopefully nudge the way we think together, guys. Just to hopefully either give us a new belief or strip away an old belief we had, and just to help us grow, bro. Just to help us grow. I think I had the conversation with you the other day. I was like, I feel weird that I watch this stuff on my spare time, but don't watch it with you guys. So I'm like, and then I heard a quote from this guy named Dan Coe, and he was like, if you're accumulating knowledge in any way and not sharing it, you are selfish. And I was like, what the fuck? Right? I was like, oh man, like I think you're right. I think you're right. So I hope you guys like that. I hope you guys really like that.